So let's create our own component. We'll do the header. So inside the source directory, create a new file. When you have a file that's going to be a component, you typically name it exactly like you name the component, capital letter and all. It helps differentiate your components from other files. Now, as a general rule, I hate capital letters as in file names, but this is totally conventional in React, so I do recommend you do it. So just header.js, capital H header.js. We could make this a stateless functional component, probably, in which case we only need to import React from React. So import React from the string React. And that tells us I need the actual React library out of the React package. Name it capital R React. Then I need to actually make my component, and it's just going to be a function, an arrow function. So const header equals arrow function. And then this next part I usually forget if I don't do it right away. I go down to the bottom of the file, and I say export default header. So this is the other side of import. We can import these files because they're exported from inside. So if I say export default header here, that means that back in app.js at the top, I like to put a break between things that are coming from node modules and things that we wrote ourselves. I can say import header from the file ./header. So because there are no curly braces around this, that means what I'm importing is the default export. And we said export default header. So it is this function that is being exported. So that's the default export for this file, which means whatever I name it, that's what it's going to be. So I could, yes, name this pancake breakfast, and it would still actually be that header component. And then I could use it inside here with a tag pancake breakfast, but that's really silly. I, of course, want to import it as header. But the point is, you can name it whatever you want. It's this export line that matters. So I'm exporting it from there and importing it into app. So you'll notice the same thing's happening with app.js. So inside app.js, I have my class app. At the very bottom, this was already there for us. We didn't add it. We have export default app. So that meant that inside index.js, which just has our React DOM render in it, I can just say import app from app and just use it. So now we're going to do the same thing with our own custom component. So what should the header be? Let's have a look at our app.js. Okay, here's the header. This should all be indented one more level, looks like. Where's the end of this div anyway? Right here. Okay, there we go. So all this should be probably one more level. Yep. Oops. Let me just get my indentation lined up here. Okay. So it looks like the header is from here to here. See that? It includes the H1 and the H3. Dwarf Underground delving deep for the shiniest news. So I'm going to actually cut this out of here. So inside app now, my class name app, I should just go straight to main. And inside header.js, this should be my return value. Since this is not a class, but a stateless functional component, I can just return some JSX. So return with some parentheses. And then what if I just paste that? That looks like it's fine because everything is already inside a container. I'll copy and paste this into Slack once I make sure it works. What do you mean? So I have this div inside here and this div. Is that what you mean?
No, because when you had it, it highlighted the line I thought was going to return.
Oh. Okay. So all my header component does is return that JSX right there. So inside app, I'm already importing this, right? And the import works because I exported it here. Export default header. So I exported this function. So that means I can just throw this in there. It is now a custom tag, basically. So right here inside div class name equals app, I can just say the tag capital H header. And again, you could put opening and closing tags, but you don't need to. Instead, you can make a self-closing tag by just putting a slash before the angle bracket. But if you have an empty element in JSX, you must put that self-closing tag. So if you have an image or an input or something like that, that has to be there. See, there are already some examples here. So this image right here, it already has a self-closing tag so that we wouldn't have problems when we copy and paste. If all is well, nothing should look any different. But now we've broken it up into an extra component. If we wanted to make header a class instead, I'll change it back. I'm not going to do this permanently, but if you wanted to do that, then typically what I would do is also import component from React. And that's a named export. So in addition to exports like this, you can also export other stuff, like export const foo equals bar or whatever. And then I could say foo like that. So named export, you put inside curly braces. So I could import component as well as React. React is the default export from React, but component is a named export, so I can do this. So then instead of const header equals an arrow function, I would say class header extends or inherits from component. And then I can't just have a return statement because this is a class now. So that has to be inside a method. So I'll just indent my return statement and make sure that it's inside a render method. As long as I put, yeah, okay, it automatically put a closing thing there. And again, it doesn't look any different. So that's as a class, or we could do a stateless functional component. Still works. All right. And we could do that because we don't have any state. We're not worrying about state inside this component. Otherwise, we would have to do a class. Extract header component.